In Part 8 of the Unit 4 notes, we are going to be covering noble gas configurations, which are an extension of electron configurations. A noble gas configuration is an even shorter variation of the electron configuration. It consists of the symbol of the last noble gas prior to that atom, which is column 18 on the periodic table, followed by the configuration of the remaining electrons. This is especially helpful for very large elements. So here we have an example that is comparing all three of the methods that we have covered. So for nitrogen, first we covered orbital notation. So nitrogen has 7 electrons. We have a spin up and a spin down in the 1s, a spin up and a spin down in the 2s, and then when the 2p, x, y, and z, we have up, 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 because of Hund's rule, spreading out before doubling up. When we had our electron configuration, each of those arrows was summarized by having a superscript. So our up and down arrow became 1s2, up and down became 2s2, and these 3 electrons became 2p3. Now if I wanted to make this even shorter, the noble gas that came before nitrogen was helium, and helium has an electron configuration of 1s2. So by writing helium inside of these brackets, I'm abbreviating that part of the configuration, and then I would only have to write out the electron configuration that comes after helium, which would be the 2s2 and 2p3 as we eventually land on nitrogen. Now you might be looking at these two different types of configurations here and thinking to yourself that you didn't really save any time or space. For relatively small atoms, it's not really going to be that different, but when we get to larger atoms towards the bottom of the periodic table, it will save you a significant amount of both time and space. For our checkpoint, we are going to be writing out the noble gas configurations for these 3 elements, and we're going to start off with silver. Now the first thing you need to do is figure out which noble gas came before silver on the periodic table. And again, the noble gases are the elements in group 18 at the very end of the periodic table. Now silver is element number 47. So if you find the element that came before 47, the noble gas that came before 47, that would be krypton, or Kr. So we put Kr in our bracket. Now we only have to write the electron configuration that would have come after krypton as we're going on our way to silver. So that would consist of 5s2, and then after 5s we would go into the 4d, and we would land on the 9th element. So this would be the noble gas configuration for silver. Now if you try to Google the noble gas configuration of silver, you might find a different configuration. So you might see Kr, 5s2, 4d10. Actually, this should be 5s1, 4d10. So in this type of exception, one electron would move from this s orbital into the d so that this could be completely filled. While this is technically true, we're not going to be considering these exceptions for what we are doing in class just to try to keep things simple. So I just wanted to clarify that in case you do any Google searches and see configurations that don't match up with what we are writing. For us, you could just write them in, filling in from the bottom, following alphabet principle, and not worrying about any exceptions to the rule. All right, for our next example, we are looking at francium. Francium is towards the bottom left-hand corner of the periodic table. The noble gas that comes before francium is Rn. After that, we are in the 7th row of the S block, and we're in the first element that we're landing on. So this would eliminate the need for 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, and so on. So this saves a considerable amount of space. Our final example here is scandium. The noble gas that came before scandium is argon, Ar. So after argon, we would then be in the 4th row of the S block, and we have to go through 2 elements. Scandium is the first element in the 3D, so we end on 3d1. So that concludes all of the notes for Unit 4. As you prepare for your test, make sure that you have completed all the assignments that will help you. Complete all practice assignments on KIA prior to the assessment. If you do particularly poorly on a practice assignment, it is your responsibility to ask questions so that you can improve. Make sure that you also complete all of our labs, including the Hogg-Hilton lab. If there's any content from a lab that you do not understand, again, it is your responsibility to ask questions. You may ask for help during independent practice time in class or before or after class. Finally, remember that in addition to these videos, there are other resources around YouTube that have been put into my Unit 4 playlist on my YouTube channel. So examples from this unit, we have videos from Professor Dave Explains, Melissa Maribel, Crash Course, and TED Ed.